Hello, thanks for stopping by. Joe Simhart here again, and it's been a while since I've posted. I'm in the middle of downsizing, and a move is about to happen. However, I picked up a book during the downsizing process that I had that someone asked me to comment on maybe a year ago, and it's this one here. It's Flow. The Psychology of Optimal Experience by Mihaly Czikszentmihalyi. And it came out in 1990, and I think I read it about a year after it came out. I was quite impressed with it. It's part of a movement called positive psychology. In other words, looking at the health of a human being and how to maintain it instead of the diagnostic looking at negative symptoms and how to heal someone that's sick. So this would be a way of looking at why some human beings in some passages in their life seem to overcome obstacles and get into the flow of life rather easily with different techniques and ideas. And so Csikszentmihalyi did a lot of years of research, decade or more, on this book, and looking at the stages of flow and what that means, and how to sustain it, and even if it can be sustained. One thing he warns about in this book is that you generally want to avoid ritualizing anything to sustain that level of consciousness, which we would call flow, or eudaimonia is what Aristotle called it, and he follows Aristotle's idea that that's the purpose of life. That's where we find meaning, when we get into the flow of something. And but generally, it comes with work, it comes with practice, and it comes with a bit of daring and facing a problem. And then having the resources inside to overcome that problem. But for my purposes, in terms of what this book would offer in terms of value for someone caught up in the occult culture and coming out of it, or cults or whatever, I'd like to just get into his first chapter, The Anatomy of Consciousness, and concentrate on one thing here. He says that we all know individuals who can transform hopeless situations into challenges to be overcome. And they do it just through the force of their personalities. This ability to persevere despite obstacles and setbacks is the quality people most admire in others, and justifiably so. It is probably the most important trait, not only for succeeding in life, but also for enjoying it as well. And again, getting in the flow of something, you enjoy it. You know, he goes into things like, for instance, in sports, you practice playing basketball, for instance, and get quite good at it. And then you're playing the sport in a team competition, and the team and yourself for a particular game really get into the flow of the game for most of the game, and you win quite resoundingly, beating the other team by double digits or whatever. And it felt like you weren't even trying, you weren't even thinking, even though there was a lot of effort being done, but it was smooth. The rates of successful baskets was higher than average. The passes seemed to go smoothly. You seemed to anticipate any kind of defensive maneuvers. And I think you know what I mean. You also know this idea of flow. For instance, someone that practices the guitar and wants to especially concentrate on jazz and blues, and they play and they play and they play, and they aren't having a lot of success getting into a band, and then suddenly something just lets go, and they're not even thinking, and the riffs are coming a lot easier. They audition again, and people are impressed with them because they're now in the flow of their music, of their instrument, and of the performance. So that's kind of like what he's talking about. The flow just doesn't come with a state of mind. It comes with the whole body engaged with the environment and the task at hand and whatever. And so let me go on with what he says, because this is crucial. To develop this trait, one must find ways to order consciousness so as to be in control of feelings and thoughts. It is best not to expect that shortcuts will do the trick. Some people have a tendency to become very mystical when talking about consciousness and expect it to accomplish miracles that at present it is not designed to perform. So in other words, we're not evolved any more than we have been in the last 10,000 years as far as a species. And it's going to be a long time before any radical changes take place that bring consciousness into some much higher level than we think it is right now. So he says they like to believe that anything is possible in what they think of as the spiritual realm. Other individuals claim the power to channel into past existences, to communicate with spiritual entities, and to perform uncanny feats of extrasensory perception, like telepathy, for instance. When not outright frauds, these accounts usually turn out to be self-delusions, lies that an overly receptive mind tells itself. And that about sums up a lot of what I explore in these videos. And then he goes on to the end of the next paragraph that, you can be a specialist, for instance, in something, like guitar player or whatever. And he says, being a specialist, he cannot afford the time or the mental energy to do anything other than fine-tune his skill or manipulating inner experiences. The skills the yogi gains are at the expense of the more mundane abilities that other people learn to develop and take for granted. So he's saying that you can gain a skill in yoga and meditation, but it doesn't necessarily make you better in all phases of life. He says that when an individual yogi what they can do is amazing, but so is what a plumber can do and a good mechanic. So it's a skill, it's not necessarily a higher consciousness thing, but you can get into the flow of a meditation, you can get into the flow of your plumbing job, and you can get into the flow of fixing a car, especially if you know what you're doing. And it feels good to accomplish those tasks. So he says that perhaps in time we shall discover hidden powers of the mind that will allow it to make the sort of quantum leaps that now we can only dream about. There is no reason to rule out the possibility that eventually we shall be able to bend spoons with brainwaves. Right. No one's done it yet. Like I often say, all the chanting I did and decreeing back in the late 70s and observing what people were doing around me that were much more experienced at this. I mean, not one of them could warm up a cup of tea for me if I asked them to use their mental energy to do that, let alone heal people at a distance and change the weather and all that kind of thing that they claimed they were doing. So, I think this book is, even though it's kind of dated, there is quite a bit online about positive psychology. It's been updated, more research. Flow was maybe the seminal book that helped ground this idea of positive psychology and how to enhance the quality of your life. This is still worth a read, and I'm rereading it maybe for the third time. He offers good advice, and like the passage I just read, it's quite practical, and warns you not to overvalue these special powers of consciousness that spiritual people claim to have. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll leave a couple of links to help you pursue this idea of positive psychology. It's worth it. Everybody could use a positive boost in their life. Thank you for listening.